da pričamo. Uvek.
Evo, počelo je snimanje, Majo. Here are we. So today I am presenting to you a special guest, my really good friend, Tala Seth. She is really experienced in making talismans with crystals, working with HECATE, necromancy, and all form of different magical subjects. She is also having PhD in Chinese medicine. So we are talking about really educated and magically experienced individual. And topic of this today's interview is controversial aspects of HECATE and HECATE as initiator into the underworld. So how are you, Tala?
Hello, I'm great, and you?
I am fine. So, if you can tell us something more about yourself and how you started working with HECATE, and just relax and talk a little bit.
Sure. Well, my start with HECATE was interesting, like every start of work with HECATE of every practitioner out there, I assume. Anyway, it was a very long time ago, and I worked with this group. I learned to work with this group, which was leaning toward Alexandrian witchcraft, but they were not Alexandrian. They were just, people who were in there and wanted to follow their own path. So I was there with people from my faculty. Some of them were into it way longer. And the first time I heard about HECATE was interesting because our high priestess in that group or coven, call it, she was scared of HECATE. She was scared so much that, in her opinion, you should banish HECATE when she appears. And as it so comes, she appeared to many people inside that group. So the lady tried banishing HECATE. She was an interesting person. She was a tiny bit arrogant, maybe not a tiny bit, but she knew it all right? So she was going to banish HECATE. In the course of weeks, when she started doing her banishing rituals or whatever, people started leaving the group. They did not feel like this is right. So at some point, there were like 5-6 people left, and she did her final ritual, whatever she intended. And of course, HECATE didn't leave, but she somehow ended in a wheelchair within the next 2 weeks. And she was scared, and okay, she did this to me, and this happened because, she's a bad demon or whatever. And it took her over a year, almost 2 full years, to recover. And she recovered also as quickly because she went to the physical therapy, did all of her scans, and doctor couldn't say what's wrong with her spine. She just couldn't walk. And she totally stopped doing any type of magic for a year. So when she came back to it, she studied a bit more and realized that HECATE is not somebody you should try to banish. Like, you can decide not to work with her, but banishing is really insulting. And she started calling up people, and people went to talk to her, many of which started working with HECATE. And in that past year, I've been studying or started studying with other people who were, more curious about what happened and all of that. And when she started learning about her, she started working with her. And at that point, within a month or a month and a half, she was back on her feet. And that is a thing that I will remember forever, because it was so blatant and obvious, and nobody could tell her what was happening. So we're all back to working with HECATE, and the only way you can work after seeing something like this is with great respect. And you also want to know everything you can know about her. She was starting from a place where she had her own idea about how you should work with HECATE by banishing her. And yeah, that changed after a year or two. And I think that was a good lesson for everybody involved.
So technically, when I started working with HECATE, I first talked to a lot of Hecatean devotees, especially you, and we talked about it for like 4 months before I ever summoned her seriously with an intention to work. My first confrontation with Hecate was through materials released by Vidian, aka VK Jahanam, and his magical trance, and Current of the Primal Craft.
Mm-hmm.
However, after talking to you for a long time and with some other Hecatean devotees, I decided to approach Hecate in the only way she came to me truly. And the only way she came to me truly was the Lord of the Underworld, the Empress of the Underworld, the Empress of the Purgatory, and the Queen of the Dead. So I called you here to discuss especially those aspects of Hecate, because
Mm-hmm.
those aspects of Hecate are usually mentioned in scholarly literature on the deity. But there is not a lot of people who actually work with this aspect of Hecate, because aspect of Hecate of this kind is, in my experience, the closest to moral ambivalence Hecate gets. So this is a form of Hecate which can be used for money magic, baneful magic, insight into the underworld, which is controversial. So I gonna tell you something I never told you in
Mm-hmm.
private. I
Okay.
saved this podcast. Uh, I created a servitor, and servitor went rogue. So you already know that story. But after I created that servitor and it went rogue, I called Hecate and I wanted to atone myself. I wanted to reforge myself and I wanted to forsake the past and I wanted to clean a past in a way. So I summoned Hecate in her form as the Empress of the Underworld, and she told me I need to pass through the Purgatory. Now, what is the Purgatory? Well, when we think about the Purgatory, we usually think about Christianity, but the truth is, the concept of Purgatory is much older than Christianity. It exists in Hinduism and it is ruled by Shiva Kalabhaira. It exists in Greek mythology and it is known as Tartarus. So, form of a fiery realm where people are purified and punished exists in technically every religion out there, at least in majority of them. So I called Hecate and she told me that I need to initiate into the purgatory and initiation technically starts right now. And then I felt astral fire below my feet, burning me, but my physical body wasn't damaged. And I felt really malevolent shadows of the dead rising from the floor. They literally rose as an astral smoke from the floor, and they started eating me. And it lasted for about 5 to 7 minutes, and then everything ceased to exist. However, I had a vision of myself being tortured, but I didn't feel any significant physical pain. So it was a form of astral transformation of the self. There is also another ritual I performed with Hecate, which involved me summoning at least 100 ghosts in the presence of Hecate, and those 100 ghosts would eat me, would eat my aura, would eat my energy. And there is a reason why I never talked publicly about those work with those ghosts and things, because I was specifically told by Hecate I am not allowed to share this with the public. I would really like to share with the public techniques, methods, and everything, but I am not allowed. So maybe in the future I will ask Hecate to share with me some aspects of it which I can give to the audience. But unfortunately, things are as they are. And the last thing I technically did with Hecate and the dead people is I kind of wanted to discover what's the thing with the restless dead, okay? Because in every religion there is a form of the afterlife, but restless dead and dead in general, the ghosts, they do not seem to fit into that version of the afterlife. Yet, when you, for example, summon ascended masters any tradition. So we can deduce that maybe there is some form of the afterlife, but restless dead and ghosts in general are actually not a part of this afterlife. They come to us from their own dimension. They come to us from their own realm, which is unconnected to the afterlives we know conventional. So I talked to Hecate a lot about that, and she didn't seem to reply. And then, from completely unexpected source, some form of the answer to this question. Again, this is not a definite answer to the question. This is some form of the answer to the question I had. I was introduced to the concept of the waiting place, or the eschaton, which is technically the place where people who died but do not want to go into any afterlife, or they are not suitable to go into any afterlife, go. And this plane, this eschaton, this waiting place, is technically the place on which Hecate has the great authority. And it is the place which is technically the part of our physical plane. It's not clear, is eschaton separate dimension, or is it simply the astral aspects of our world? And this kind of explains why you can see dead everywhere here pretty much, and they do not obey any rules given in any religion, because they are pretty much their own thing. They live in their own dimension, and they have their own rules and things. So that's what I wanted to talk with you about, because you are also extremely experienced necromancer and you work with it for a long time.
True. So what's the question? What about the dimensions actually, or what Hecate's role in it is, or everything?
So my question is not actually a question. I would like for you to share anything you know about the dead and working with the dead and Hecate, which you are actually allowed to share publicly, because there are things you are definitely not allowed to share. So just
those things you're allowed or not allowed to share are personal. So depending on your road, your path you're taking while working with an entity, she can allow you to say some things or not allow you for the moment being, because you need to understand them first, or whatever the lesson is. So for me personally, I do not see, the division as strong as you do. Or let's say the division into the underworld or astral plane and our plane is something that is a human construct, because we cannot really explain where is what. And that is also not the point. You can, when you're working with a deity, you are also learning about the mythology. Mythology is the stories that the people have recorded throughout history and all that. So about Hecate, you have a place which is Hades, which is the underworld. And then you have this world, and you have a road to this world. And Hecate is the one that brings the soul there. And then there is the story that their life is supposed to be weighed, and depending of how heavy or light their soul is, or experiences or personality, they are allowed into the underworld or not. This is how the mythology goes. And this concept exists in basically every major religion or just every major culture from the past. So what her main role in this is to bring the deceased to where they need to go. Now, we are talking about people. Those were people who died, right? And then we have this also concept about the soul having unfinished business on this plane, right? Earth is also a plane. And this is not something that comes from Christianity. That was taken over. This exists also everywhere. So there are ghosts, which, or souls or entities of the deceased, who are stuck in this plane or some in between plane, because they have unfinished business or something went wrong and they could not pass over. And we do not know what happens exactly. However, when you do necromancy, you are mostly going to come in touch with this type of spirits, because those are the spirits that you see in the first place. And people who do necromancy, or just people, even people who don't do necromancy and do some kind of magic, and also normal people who do no magic, understand that when they go to some place, they feel amazing. And then they go to a different place and they really don't like the place. It's creepy. It makes them feel cold and all of that. Now, there are ghost stories, of course, and the movies have made sure that these ghost stories are, made really creepy and all of that. But in reality, the majority of the deceased people that you get to see around you are not malevolent at all. So it's always the question, what's happening on there. Let's say the latest experience that I had is girl's house. She was referred to me by a friend who is also a practitioner. And interesting thing about that place was that she and her family moved in there, let's say 20 years ago. They do not know who owned the house before. So she bought it. They bought it from the community place. It was not sold by a person because the previous owner, nobody knew. Like, the house was abandoned. And the place they moved into, after 20 years, has none of their energy. The energy of the previous people was so dense that they do not feel at home. They don't feel that something is okay. The house feels way darker, even with huge windows and all that. So we did, what you do in necromancy, and trying to contact and trying to clear out the space. And those people were aware that they were dead, but they were not aware that they can leave. Like, there was something tragic that happened in the past to that family where they basically got stuck in that place, like a photograph. Like, somebody took a photograph of them on that day when something really bad happened, and then they were just stuck there. And despite her having several people telling her, oh, this is going to take months, and huge amounts of money to clear out, we managed to clear it out in like 2 sessions. And this also shows you how much we are in contact with that world. Like, she's not a practitioner. Her family has no practitioners. They know nothing about magic or nothing about necromancy at all, but they felt it all. So us as humans are attuned to other humans who were deceased regularly. So in this particular case, I didn't even have to call on HECATE to bring somebody away. The people just decided, like, oh, we can live here, so we're gonna live here. But in some cases where you have to call in on HECATE, in my experience, is mostly where there is something that is malevolent that really doesn't want to leave, or almost like a poltergeist, if you want to call it like that. And let's say in the Hecatean community, there's two currents, right? And I do not assign those currents to anything else but information. For example, I'm in the covenant of the Hecate. The covenant has insane amount of, let's say, additional information. And it's also a place where you can ask the people who are older, more experienced, about what you're seeing, and have some fact check about what's been told about Hecate online and so on. And then I have it easier that way, but I've also never stopped learning about her. You have a different current of people who have not learned enough about the goddess to be able to see all of her aspects. I mean, maybe we all probably don't see all of her aspects, but if you talk about her as of, entity that is love and light and a beautiful caring mother and all of that. This is not the case. She is historically assigned to this, let's say, task of meeting all sorts of ghosts and people. And, it's her job. She is also the queen of the underworld, the queen of the dead. She is also a psychopomp that brings spirits to the underworld, but she also helps you enter the trance state and enter the underworld within that trance state. She's a guide. So just seeing her one way is really makes really linear and unimportant. Let's put it that way.
So technically speaking, what I wanted also to share on this channel, I think I am allowed, is that HECATE, the reason why I like working with HECATE is because you can fit her into absolutely any pantheon you possess. It is the most adaptable spirit I ever conjured, and she is also capable of separating the energies of the different currents. So each energy flown in its own way, and they do not intervene with each other. So there is a ritual with HECATE you can do. So you come to the graveyard, then you repeat the chant HECATE, Dea, Dienek until the HECATE comes. And then you offer the food, drink, and the incense to the graveyard. And you call all of the restless dead of the graveyard to come and to empower you. And what will happen is something I will never forget. I did the version of this ritual twice. So you do it and you literally see astral smoke, like light and dark green smoke, rising from the ground and taking form of those beings, of those spirits. And they then come and approach you, then empower you or eat you, depending on the nature of the dead person. And it is really kind of traumatic experience, but it really works. So the only thing you need to do is to give offerings on the grave, light an incense, and call HECATE beforehand on that same graveyard, so she can be an arbiter of who can approach and who cannot. Because let's be honest, every graveyard has lunatics on it, so you don't want to summon the dead just like that. But personally, when I do exorcisms, what I found out is when I call the deity and I do not resonate with the case of the possessed, or I do not feel that I should do the exorcism, even if I do it, it doesn't work as intended. So, what's your, because actually there are people who doesn't want to get rid of their problems. They claim they do, but in reality they did it themselves. They allowed it to call themselves, and they do not want to get rid of it because it's kind of perfect cover up for them to continue their fucked up behavior. And usually when you work with those cases, you pretty quickly figure out that spirit is actually not the problem, and that there
Yeah.
is a bunch of other underlying problems. So if somebody comes to you and you do the exorcism and you feel immediately energy flowing because of the ritual, and you see spirit resisting the exorcism, and then you kind of finish it in 5 to 10 sessions, or maybe even in 2, then you will usually see the grace from the person for which you did it, and it will end fine. But in those cases in which you like banish the spirit pretty quickly, and then you raise the space, but then spirit returns somehow over and over again. If it keeps happening, like if it happens 1 and 2 times, maybe you did something wrong. But if it happens 10 times, then we are talking about some other underlying problem which has nothing to do with spirits. And that underlying problem is actually creating unstable energies which are conducive for manifestation of those entities. So, what's your experience with exorcism?
I do not call it exorcism. I call it I don't call it anyway. Uh, Let me tell you, you are on point with that one. You're on point, because this is not only the case in magic, this is also the case in medicine. You know, if you have a person who is a smoker, let's say the easiest ever idea, person is a smoker and he comes to you and tells you, well, make me stop smoking. And then you ask them, do you want to stop smoking? And they just look at you like, are you crazy? That person is never going to stop. So you give them your phone number and tell them, call me when when you want to stop. And this is the case with all the entities or people who are feeling they're like possessed or taking over or made to do stuff by an entity. To me personally, I've read a lot of historical stuff. I've also read a lot of the stuff that is in, let's say, church archives, because I lived in a country where those church archives exist in some Catholic churches and stuff. I think that there is a rise of this behavior since Christianism, because it was encouraged that you say, oh, I've been possessed, or there's this spirit torturing me, or the devil made me do it, right? So that's something that I think happens way more since Christianity. It did happen before, but from my knowledge of history, the people in, let's say, tribal way of life did not see those spirits as bad spirits. You know, everything that we call demons or bad spirits now wasn't called like that before Christianity. Just very few did, because people did understand the duality of any deity. There is no such thing like purely good and purely bad deity. Same like there is no such thing like purely good person or purely bad, or a white witch and a black witch. I'm a person who says that there is no white or black witchcraft. It just depends against who you're doing something or for whom you're doing something, right? If you heal a person who comes to you and you're all happy about healing that person, and you don't know that that person is an abuser, or he's beating his wife and kids, what have you done? You've helped an abuser, right? Is that white magic, right? And so to me, magic has no color. But I'm just going on about the things that happened before Christianity, correct? So people did not see the spirits as good as bad. People did not have that many ideas about this bad spirit made me. People turned more to the ancestors because they could connect to them. So when you have something that keeps returning nowadays, let's put away the Christian bias where people say, oh, it's making me do it. Number one, every person, no matter if they do magic or not, they should strive to change the behavior. If you have a bad behavior in any way and you just push this away to a spirit, it's bull. So I've never had a situation where spirit returned so many times. I've never had. But I also approach people differently. And between two of us, the way I talk to people and the way I tell people, okay, let's talk a real talk now, or don't bullshit me, right? And
Yeah.
I think that approach, I think that approach is, I'm all sweet and kind, but to a point. And then at some point, like, okay, we stop this right now. I'm going to ask you this question 10 times until you realize why I'm asking you this question. Because it might come from my, medical background or just the training that I have with the patients as well. But it's also just observing humans all this time. I mean, I do not know if I consider myself human at this point. I know how it sounds, but it's interesting to observe how humans behave. And if I see a pattern, I'm never going to say this is coming from a ghost. It's not. I'm not enabling a person if I see that the person is creating something. There is this concept of tulpas. I don't know. I think you know the expression. Tulpa is the idea of a being, a spirit, or entity that is purely created by you. or many deities have started out as tulpas. They are, deities as we see them are not the deities that they are. They are what we have seen in them. They're the tulpas that we created. And with enough people and energy that are put into that belief, this is what we see. So when there is a spirit torturing somebody, and that person can get rid of the spirit, and you as an experienced necromancer or person who does exorcism or however you call it, when you see that, it's always the person. The person needs help. And when you move away the idea from the spirit into, shifting it toward that person's responsibility, then the person changes. From your own start with HECATE, in this case, because I've been following that you've been slapped quite a few times in different ways. And she slaps you hard. And that's only her. Other deities do the same thing. So if you want to work with HECATE, like as a practitioner, you cannot lie to her yourself. Meaning you cannot lie to yourself. You can't say, I'm this and that and this, because she's going to humble you. She is. And this works for everybody. And when somebody comes and says, I have a spirit in me and the spirit is making me do it, that's the biggest bullshit a person can say. So you work with person actually more than you work with whatever is torturing them. That's like my 2 cents on it.
Here is the thing. There is an actual possession, which is usually the product of baneful magic, but actually that's so rare that
Exactly.
when somebody comes to me with a case, I don't even consider it.
Yeah.
Because contrary to the popular belief, enormous skill is necessary to actually call the spirit, manifest it, and then direct it exactly to possess somebody. I never met a living magician capable of doing it.
Let's speak about the case that you and I did together a year ago or so. About the girl who was possessed by jinn.
Not necessarily possessed.
But yeah, okay, let's call it like that. Okay.
She was more like an invaded by the ghoulish tribe. And
well, let me tell the case. So a person calls me. Person is a doctor who has like 4 masters, 4 PhDs, and whatever the hell he has. And he calls me as a doctor to ask me about this one case that they cannot crack. They did every possible thing, including toxicology analysis of this girl to see if she's been poisoned. They did everything. The thing is, the girl cannot sleep at night. She has terrible night terrors, not nightmares, but night terrors where she cannot wake up from. She's very thin. She cannot eat. And on occasion, she starts screaming, having insane pain. So when they take her blood, they can see that cortisol level have raised, like she's in huge distress. They cannot tell what it is from. So they thought it's psychological. And she went into observation for a week. They gave her tranquilizers. And even when she was out, like fully out, they could say she's like almost, she passed out. This thing repeated. So he calls me to ask me if there is something from the alternative standpoint that we could consider. We ended up in a weird case, right? The girl, let's say the girl has something in her. There's this story about her family. They moved into the area that was a Muslim area back in time during the wartime. They're Catholic, and this area has been cleared out of Muslims. It's been cleared out by a massacre. Okay. Many people died there. Something really bad happened, and these people just took over the empty houses. Okay, we're talking about the war in the 90s.
And we are talking about ethnic cleansing, so
exactly. So with all of that background, it showed different lights. So we did this thing together because you work with the jinn, and we thought it's initially the jinn. Let's see what's happening. So what happened? My idea, or what we saw, is that there is like some kind of blanket cover of that area. I can't even say it. It's like, you can say it's a curse. You know, you can say maybe a guy who is, you know, the head of that Muslim community has almost put a curse on this place because he knew somebody else is going to take it over. We don't know what exactly it was.
So can I ask? Can I
Yeah.
tell you something?
Yes.
Because
Yes.
first you're gonna tell me, do you have any? Because we performed the exorcism and I pretty much bailed out after we did it because
It resolved itself halfway, but the girl also didn't change her behavior. You know, she did not. She's so scared that she doesn't want to change anything. We couldn't do more than that, right? But
did
what
you stop having nightmares at least?
she did,
Right.
she did. But she still lives the same way because she's expecting them now, right? But
So technically, we did our job correctly, but she is still traumatized. She has
yes,
PTSD.
and her whole
That's
family.
not, here is the thing. That's not something you can, because I had a pretty profound spiritual attack last year.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. Attacked
Yeah.
by somebody else. I needed 3 months to recover. Imagine somebody being under genic attack for like 18 years. It would leave psychological consequences. That's not something you and I can help with the
No.
spell. That's something she needs to deal on her own. So you noticed when you entered the area
Yeah.
astrally, you saw a lot of dark gray condensed smoke. And I know right now exactly what it is. So we will kind of jump out from HECATE for now. And I need to tell you this information because you seem really interested. So who they summoned for this? Originally, I thought that it was some of Iblis's uh, soldiers. I thought it was the Shayateen, but then I told you it's not the Shayateen, it's actually the ghouls, right? And you know who the ghouls are? Those are spirits of the jinn who live in the graveyards and they feed on impurities. This is the form of magic which I didn't knew existed until 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew from the case we worked on that this specific lodge we fought against, magically speaking, we removed the curse, works with the ghouls. But I didn't knew that there are actually the guys in that community who work with the Hassan Abdul Ghul. Well, Hassan is technically the ghoulish elder.
Mm-hmm.
He is to the ghouls what Adam is to man. So, and he technically, when I worked with him, because I worked with him as a part of my genic working, he told me the following. Our goal is to rise the polluted flames. So polluted flames is that dark gray energy you saw, to rise it up to the heavens and to blacken the sun. So what the Sufi sorcerer did is he technically called Hassan Abdul Ghul and he cursed the entire area and infested it with the flames so that ghoulish tribes can come in. So he just cursed the area and said, come, this is your territory. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
We just walked in there, you know, casually. Let's see what happens. That was intense. And this is one of the two cases in my 20-year experience where something was really, I can really put it off as possession, or, you know, really bad spirits taking over. And everything else is, as we talked, usually something else. It's a person in conjuncture with something else, and they're
but
not
here's the
actually.
thing.
Yeah.
The reason why I am not proud of this case is because people were extremely ungraceful. I mean,
Yeah.
so what I did, so let me tell you something. What I did is I first called HECATE. HECATE guided me to Iblis. Then I summoned Iblis. Then I went to a rite in which I emerged with one of the Marid jinn who was kind of within me. Then in that state of partial possession, I called the Jinnic King of Saturn. Then I received information from him, and then you and I performed together exorcism with the Jinn King of Saturn to remove the spirits from the area. So how many rites we did? I think at least 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And we did it in a span of 2 days. So it was one of the most intense working I ever, and I never got a thank you for that, you know?
Me neither, but that's what happens. I mean, I don't even look for a thank you, to be honest. But for me, uh, I, I don't know if that sounds selfish. I was interested. I was interested to see what's going to happen. Of course, you want, you want to do and help a person, but on the other hand, we learned a ton of stuff from that single case, because that
Yeah.
was one like real case. I would say that was a real case.
So technically speaking, let's talk about HECATE again for 40 more minutes, because like I want the interview to last an hour and a half. So my work with HECATE, here is the thing, like the goddess Morana. So Morana breaks you quickly and intensely.
Yep.
HECATE breaks you in stages.
And slowly.
Slowly, really slowly.
Yeah.
So here is the thing. Now there is a problem when I work with HECATE. I need to talk with you about this.
Mm-hmm.
So when I work with HECATE for a long time, what happens is I go without any effort into the spirit world. So my mind becomes overwhelmed with those visions. And the problem is it becomes difficult to control them. So it doesn't look as I am soul traveling. It looks like I am in between the worlds. So I am walking, but I am also seeing astral crossroads and the spirits watching at me and some form of a dark purple mist.
Mm-hmm.
So how to technically take control of the visions? That's my question.
By doing them over and over. Uh, you can't really control what's happening around you, right? You control yourself. You can control where you want to be. So the thing you can do with help of Hecate or not, because she's a psychopomp, she can help you move to certain area or do certain things. But you need to do this step by step. By, let's say, first you take shape of something. Let's say you're trying to change your shape into a tree. You want to be a tree on astral for a day? Sure. So you should work on your form mostly, and then you will have more control also over the movement, because we have a memory of our body, our physical body. But that you do not move with your physical body on the astral. People try to walk on the astral. And when you do astral travel, usually it's easier to concentrate on a place or a person, and you're like, whoop, you're there, right? So to be more to have it more easier to control on the astral yourself and the stuff around you, you basically need to be able to let go of your bodily memories, consciously. There's a
Yeah.
whole lot of things to do about that, but yeah.
So technically, can you talk a little bit about how to do rights of possession with Hecate? Because this is the subject which is coming to my mind regarding this podcast. So
Yeah. Well, now you and I are doing totally different things, right? You're more into the left-hand path, and you're working more with the dark entities of different pantheons. I am more like, let's say, classically trained, not classically trained, but I'm doing more classical work with Hecate. Uh, there are different ways to do stuff. One thing that I'm going to now, I'm not sponsored in any way, but there is a book that is a crazy good book that's called Lifting the Whale. And that's made, not the whale as an animal, the whale, you know, it was made by David Rankin and Janet Farrar, the book. And the book is crazy good. It has some guides how to go into the underworld, and you can basically approach a deity in that way. So for people who want to start out, maybe that book would be something. But when you work with Hecate, you can call her. Doesn't mean she will come every time or she will come to possess you every time. However, while working with her, you really have to be true to yourself and to her. The more open you are, the more aware you are of yourself, of your problems, of the way you're dealing with stuff, of your own image. People tend to have insanely elaborate images about themselves. And after a long time working with Hecate, you get so humbled that you maybe even not have an idea what the hell you are. So the main thing, if you really want to go there, is to let her lead you. That's the first thing. If you're asking for help, then you're letting her lead you. The second thing is to be really open about everything. If you see a vision about yourself and you don't like it, it's a slap. But you take that slap and you work with it. You don't say, "Oh, she just showed me this today. I really don't know what it means." You know. So this is the main predisposition. If you are not able to open yourself up fully, and then don't work with that deity. It's not only about Hecate, it's about but with her specifically. She wants to see the true you. And then you invoke her with any way you do. Like there's many different rituals how you invoke her. If you're a devotee of Hecate, from the covenant of Hecate, you have written a hymn for her. This is the way to be a part of the covenant. So you invoke Hecate with your own hymn, and you are not allowed to share that. So it's your own, connection to her. If you are not part of the covenant and you didn't do the whole, ritual as a devotee, then you can use one of the many historical ways to call her own or your own way. But at the end, she wants to see the true you. That's the only thing. And then she will show you stuff. And she will show you stuff you're ready for. And trust me, nobody who works with Hecate ever said she showed me too little. It's always she showed me this and I wasn't ready. So have that in mind. I mean, you were ready. That's why she showed you, but yeah.
So I think personally, work with other deities led me back to Hecate again. And now I understand what she showed me about 5 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So she tried to show me extremely painful necromantic works. So the form of a shit you see in horror movies, like crazy dead people. She was like,
Okay.
I told you in the beginning of the video, it was dead, like dead eating me, dead rising from the graves, and things of that nature, but in really vile and physical manner. You know what? There is a lot of those necromantic works where you kind of work with them, but it's astral. But this was a really
Give me
vile.
give me a second to tell you a thing. I know many practitioners naturally. The way you see a violent way of necromancy is way different between men and women in the first place. Okay, so there is that. At least one or two of our friends who are men and have done this very violent type of thing. And I know a couple women who do the same, your path of magic, but they do not see it as violent. So also take in mind that what you see is your, you know, manifestation of what's happening. There is also that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I then.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
to finish the sentence,
Sorry.
so it's astral, but this time it kind of wasn't astral. It was physical with Hecate, and it was
Mhm.
really wild. So I kind of didn't understood the thing, so I left. And then I was guided by other spirits to understand that the point of those rites isn't necessarily to harm people.
Mhm.
The point of those rites is to thin the veil between the worlds. So you can thin the veil to the point that you can physically merge with the all, with the absolute, through the act of baneful magic. And that's technically the point of the left hand path. to merge with God through astral violence. And when I understand it, I can now call HECATE and work on that. Because that's the point. You use your negative emotion to break the whale, and then it initiates self-transformation, because then energy of the whale pours into you immediately, and you have much stronger visions immediately, and you become the elevated being. That's why you had sacred warrior cults in the past. For example, Spartans or Vikings or old Slavs. They have those warrior cults, well, where warrior would like fight with another warrior, and then he slays a warrior, he slays an enemy, and from the slain enemy he sees the visions of the gods.
Yeah.
So this is the same thing. You destroy the whale and you see the gods, but you do it in a warlike way. So
I mean,
this,
it's all human way, you know. It just depends in what direction you're going, right? Humans will wage the wars all the time, and humans will be in love all the time. And it just depends on the person, you know. Your path is really working with you, working for you. You feel it, you do it that way, and different people do it the other way, and none of that is wrong, you know.
yeah.
Depends on the practitioner. If that is what you see when you call her and she's pushing you through that way, so that is something you have to learn through that practice. That's,
Yeah.
you know, who's to say it's wrong?
And what's like interesting is when you do this act of destroying the whale, right? So you curse the whale and the spirit come to you from the other side of the whale. They overload you with negative energy, and then you feel absolute joy from negative energy. This is something I never uh, read anywhere. I never considered anywhere. But one other spirit I'm not going to name told me, if you want to go from ignorance to knowledge, you need to overload ourselves, to overload yourself with so big amounts of negative energy that your observation of ignorance will fall apart.
Yeah, well, look at that from a different point. Let's say you have a hard life.
Yeah.
Many people, many practitioners actually had really hard life and decided, I'm going to go this way because there's something more I should know about life, right? But let's say if you did not experience anything too bad as a child, as an adult, or whatever, like some people were close to death and whatever, you still need to be broken in a way, right? You like, there's also this story in psychology where they say the first partner that actually breaks you as a person is the worst partner you will have, but is also the partner that will kick your ass into actually realizing who you are and what you don't want in life. So they kick your ass into changing. And this is also true for the magical practice. If you know, you were not beaten as a kid or whatever the hell happens all to the humans, you know, you were not in a, let's say you had a pretty comfortable life economically, you were not poor, you had a standard life, and then you start doing magic, it's going to pull you to that side. Like you really need to go through the area where you are experiencing maximum negativity and feeling like nothing and having overload of negative in order to change yourself. Like it's like when you make steel from iron, you really need to go through the fire for that, and that's true for every path.
Yeah, but I will kind of talk about this concept of opening a gateway to God,
Yeah.
to negative energy, like a literal gateway. But we're gonna save it for another video. But what I wanted to ask you is some of your methods of conjuring the dead,
Hmm.
how you summon them.
I do a very similar ritual like you do for Samhain, for Halloween. Uh, and it's basically the ritual where you honor the dead. So you give out offerings I open the circle. Many people work with not opening the circle. I like having a protective circle. And I do call my deities. And I always call HECATE for that. But when I do that, it depends what I'm trying to do. If I'm trying to get some informations from a specific spirit, then I'm trying to concentrate on that one spirit. If not, then I'm just calling whoever wants to come and help. So I can't tell you the whole ritual, of course, it's written out and whatever. But if you look for any sewing ritual where the veil is the thinnest and you want to bring in spirits, then any ritual that works with them is good enough to call them in. It's a different situation if I go somewhere and I see that a place or a house has something in it. Then I'm talking to that entity directly, correct? But if I'm doing a ritual, then I do the very similar ritual to the Sovin one. You call in the spirits that should join you or whoever wants to join, and then either talking directly to them or with the deity, you can figure out what to do. And this is mostly trance state. Magic happens 90% in your astral or trance state or different astral planes. So whatever happens there, you can protect yourself or protect them or, see what's happening. But yeah,
So,
it depends on the path. I can give you the exact words that I'm saying, but it's not going to mean much to people who are not doing that direction of magic. But so anything you do during Samhain or during the Halloween or Cinco de Mayo in May, this comes from the Native American tribes. This is also the time when the veil thins. And you know that in Slavic world, we have 3 times a year where people go to, honor the dead, called Zadušnice. So
yeah,
that's all the times where you can actually work very well. And whatever ritual you use for that, you can use to work with the dead anytime.
So technically what we do is we just put the bunch of food on the graveyard and then we technically wait for the dead to come. There is no
you can say who would you want to come. That doesn't mean more won't come to have some offerings, but
Yeah.
it's easy. There is nothing complicated about that. You just need to be open to whoever will come, and of course protect yourself in any way you do.
Yeah. So what I also wanted to ask you is, do you have any techniques and technologies for opening of the third eye with HECATE? Because that's the main question I get. How can we open third eye? How can we feel spirits more effectively?
I'm going to tell you a thing. When you're ready to have your third eye open, the HECATE is going to punch your third eye open. Don't worry. So it's a punch. You can work on different kinds of techniques. Like third eye is the idea coming from the Hinduism with the chakras. And then we have the idea of the pineal gland and the third eye here, which is not so elaborate. We do not have all the different chakras and stuff. But basically you work on your inner energy centers, all of them. You can't only, if your heart is not okay and you're unable to feel compassion, but also cut yourself off from, bad behavior, you're not ready. If your plexus is bad in a way, you're overeating yourself. You're incapable of keeping people at distance. You have a bad relationship to your mother, which you haven't overcome. All of this stuff, you work on different aspects of yourself, because if you have third eye open, that means all of your other chakras are able to carry the weight of what you see. So you work on your own inner centers, different emotions, different elements, call them like that. And then you're trying to bring those in balance, as in you're trying to stay true to who you are, to learn new behaviors, to let go of what's bad. And when you do that, your third eye is going to open. You can call HECATE to help you with that. Trust me, when she opens your third eye, you're not ready for it. you're basically not ready for it. It's not, some kind of, oh, I have, blue light coming out of my forehead. I can see the world. It's the most screwed up experience that's going to happen to everyone. You know that. So the only way to work toward that is working on your inner chakras, elements, whatever you call them, and then you are open enough and ready enough and not ignorant enough to see stuff, and then it's going to open. I know it's not what you wanted to hear, but it's how it usually
So what you
happens.
suggest for the audience is to do regular chakra work and invoke the elements and work their ass until they develop themselves to the point.
There is one sentence in the whole magic that you can apply to every person in the world, no matter magician or not. It's called know thyself. And even though that sentence is so simple, it's so hard because people do not know who they are. They do not know what they like. They do not like what they don't like. You can see in the choice of partners of people what they settle for instead of, choosing a person they're going to be okay with. And everybody goes through that in life. Nobody finds a perfect person on the first try. So, us as humans, we are explorers and searchers. And we need to, first of all, find out who we are in order to be able to form any kind of meaningful relationship. That means with another human and with a deity. We can lie to ourselves. We can say, Hecate talks to me. I've seen, how many people have you seen online who said, I am the daughter of Apollo. I am the son of Hecate. She's my mother. Just the stuff she tells me is true. Those do those people know what they are talking about or who they are?
Like the problem with that is, here is the thing. I have red flags whenever somebody claims exclusive relationship with the divine. That's the first red flag. And the second red flag is that gods agree with them always. So,
Yes.
in my experience, in majority of cases, the gods actually disagree with me. And not only they disagree with me intellectually, they actively put me in a situation which forces me to change everything.
Yes. Yeah. And that is telling you that you're doing the good thing now, right?
And here is the thing. What I also discovered is that different spirits have completely different opinions about the same issue.
Mm-hmm.
For example, let's say I want to curse somebody, right? So, for example, Kali would be against the curse and he would advise me to use that negative energy for other purpose, for example, to till the veil. For example, but if you summon Iblis or Hassan, they will definitely be pro-cursing. Why? Because they are different spirits, right?
They
So
all
if
they
you,
all take in different energy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And another red flag is when you call multiple spirits and they all tell you the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's another red flag, because if they all tell you the same thing, then you are pretty much connecting yourself to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If it's something external, you would get rapidly different advice. And here's the thing. Sometimes that rapidly different advice will lead you to same place, right? But the pathway will be really, really different. For example, you and I kind of tried to work on one problem you have. And we contacted multiple deities. And every single deity we contacted in had a completely different solution.
Yeah.
So, for example, Hecate told you to kind of don't bother
Yep.
and simply be protected and build your own life from there. Belial told you to use all of the lawless method to get what you want. So bribe the judge, bribe the people, invoke the spirits, eat as much as you can, drink as much as you can, build up your physical body. And then Morana was like, what about vampirizing someone? So the goal was the same, but the solution was such a radically different that if you have the same thing told you by multiple spirits, you probably have to work on your astral senses a lot more. What was the ridiculous anecdote? is I work with HECATE and I work with Lilith. So HECATE told me that for a certain period of time I should practice sexual abstinence. But Lilith was like there and she was like making me excited all the time. And while HECATE is trying to tell me to be abstaining, Lilith is like actively explaining how to use that same energy and express it to get the same thing. And it became so difficult that I have to cut one of them because it was impossible to work with all of them effectively at the same time in that particular case. So can you explain to us how HECATE differs, for example, from Belial? Because you actually worked with Belial significantly, not just with me, but also in your youth. And many people associate HECATE and Belial together. What's your experience with the two?
Okay, so about the different questions, yeah, like the different answers that you get, you are absolutely correct on that one. We can try to explain it in the most easy way. You have something that we call demons right now. Okay, they were not always called demons, but you have, let's say, lower entities and higher entities. Their frequency is different, so they are connected. Let's call them chakra. Let's say they're connected to your different chakras. Okay, they're connected to the different aspect of you. The lower entities, or not lower as you know, put them down in any way, but they're just working on the lower frequencies. They're working on your lower chakras. They're connected to your survival, fight or flight instinct, you know, all the sexual instincts, all the instincts where you have to find food, shelter, be protected. Okay, so the deities, on the other hand, or the higher entities, they're connected to you through higher frequencies. They're connected to your emotions, to your astral senses, the third eye, and directly inputting stuff into you, you know, although the lower entities can also make you channel stuff, correct? But if you try to channel what Lilith tells you about certain solution, and you try to channel maybe Hecate or try to channel, I think, Minerva or whoever, they're going to give you different answers because they're talking through different aspects of you. Lilith will never talk to you through your heart chakra, right? Or to your throat chakra. She is going to be violent and instinctively, you know, awake. She's going to make you want to do things in this manner. It's like, let's say, more primitive manner for a human being. The deities will try to work it out different way by talking to your upper chakras or your higher frequencies. So you can't really expect to find a deity and call it a demon, give you the same advice. If they do, that means something is wrong with you. That means you're not connected to yourself. And you're absolutely correct about that one. This is how it works. If you ask Hecate to help you, she can be violent, but she's never going to have that as a first, answer. And from my own experience, if she wants you to be violent towards somebody, she's going to go do something herself to those people, to protect you. There's so many weird things that are happening to people around, and some of them you can just say after. Let's say, I'll tell you, I'm not going to go into details, but I'm going to tell you something that happened. Okay. My son was in great danger by a very close person. He could have died. I'm not going to go into the story about Hecate's connection to that exact day, but I'm going to tell you something about the next year. Okay. This person wants to take him for a certain amount of time, and the kid doesn't want to go. And I reach out to Hecate, and I'm just like, okay, I need this, we need to solve this. I will do just any ideas that I can apply to this person. I've done this like in the evening. While I was doing this, It already happened because this person sends me a video and a shot of his foot. He broke his foot and he cannot travel and he cannot take the kid. It happened before I even asked it to happen, before I knew it happened that day. So it really depends on what you were, asking for, what needs to be done. Usually, if you need something done in such an extreme way, it's going to be done. And the deity is also going to do it. If not, they would have found a different way. So it's yours. If you're working with the entities that speak to your upper self and to your lower self, it's really up to you which advice you're going to take. You can always ask, what do you think about, or what would be better? At the end, it's your decision as a person in which way you're going to go. There's no wrong answers here. It just depends. If you want to go, for example, me personally, I don't go around cursing people. It just doesn't speak to me. I'm not doing that. If I want somebody stopped, I'm going to stop them in a different way. Trying to do something that will change that person or impact that person in a different way. But just cursing them, it's like shooting a mosquito with a cannonball. It's too big for the person. Maybe some people deserve it, some people need that, but all in all, there is more efficient, maybe even more cruel ways, to bring somebody to the senses.
So technically, what I wanted to tell for the sake of this video is you can, like, for example, curse concepts. You can curse boundaries. You can curse the whale. You can curse the boundaries of your life so they can collapse and your life can expand.
I mean, you can call it curse, but it's just different. It's like you're removing that thing from your life. You're just removing it.
You're using the same form of energy you would use if you want to kill someone.
I guess,
so it's technically a curse. So there is one thing I did which I also didn't tell you about, which is opening up portals for HECATE.
Okay.
So technically, you go to the place where you want to open the portal, and then you summon HECATE, and then you channel the dark purple energy of HECATE through your third eye into one particular point until it kind of creates a small hole of purple energy, which kind of bombards from the other side into this plane. And then you proclaim this: I infuse with a piece of my divine spark this gateway to stand eternally, and you, HECATE, will transform this piece of divine spark and return it to me in your image. And you will literally feel the piece of you coming into the gate and then return to you a refined form, and then the gateway will not close. It will be stable. So this is something I did. This is something I never heard anybody else is doing. Maybe you did it, but you didn't tell me you did it.
I did not. This is not something that is like classical way of working with HECATE. If you look into that direction, she doesn't really need you to, right? She's a deity. It's a different thing. Let's say you're opening the portals for the Fae. That's a different thing because they're a different kind of entity, but the deities don't really need it. You can have this portal. I mean, it means most to you, and maybe some people might be able to detect it, who work with her and understand the energy, but this is mostly for you to do it that way. It's basically the same thing like when you have a designated place to work with the deity, right? When you have an altar for Hecate, it creates pretty much the same energy flow. So you can do that, but I don't think you will find many people who do it that way because it's not, let's say, a very wide known concept of opening the portals, because you basically don't need to. Like she's sometimes there before you call her, right? Yeah, but I'm not saying it's not legit, but that's why you will not find many people doing that, because it's not necessary in order to work with her. It can be for yourself a boost, of her energy, but it's not the classical way.
Yeah, but the reason why I find this interesting is because it really links you to the current. It links the piece of your divine spark to the current in a really direct way. So connection becomes really, really intuitive.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of became much more able to understand what you are receiving. And can you like share for the end of this video, because we have maybe 15 more minutes,
Mm-hmm.
some meditation people can do with HECATE, like something really short and practical for people to apply.
Okay, let's try this. I'm very into, let's say, trance states. That sounds bad, but I've studied trance for many years, and it is the best way to get connected to anything or just to have a nice afternoon, I guess. But I can share, instead of sharing the actual guided meditation, I can explain how people can use this knowledge or the steps that I will give in order to make their own meditations be deeper, and more meaningful and be able to connect. So the idea behind the meditation, well, trance and meditation are different. Meditation is where your mind is clear, but the trance state or the astral travel is where you see pictures. So the trance state, when we are in hypnosis, hypnosis comes from the Greek word dream or sleep. So we are in hypnosis. We think that we are not there. Hypnosis and the trance state or the astral travel are all the same state. What's the difference between hypnosis or trance state and the awake state? You have 5, 6, 7 senses, or whichever, depending on the person. And when you're awake, you use maximum 2 senses. Let's say we see something and we hear something, or we primarily see something and maybe feel a chill or hot or whatever. When we're in a trance, people think that we are asleep. We are not. Our brain, being used to using the minimal amount of senses, is actually expanded because during the trance, we have our 3 or 4 senses open. What does that mean? We can induce ourselves into trance by using the senses, by opening the senses. How does that go? Chakras go from, up or until down. So they are connected to your different emotions and senses. And it's the same with the sense that you want to use. So let's say we want to go into an underground cave, and that cave has no direct way in. You have to dive into the water. That's a simple setting. And in that cave, we're going to meet Hecate. So what do we want to do? We want to open all of our senses. First of all, the sense or, just our brain or the upper chakra would be to imagine that image. The next sense is our visual. We are going to try to see the details around us. Not push it, not like, oh, I need to see every single detail, but okay, are there ferns and bushes around the water? How does that look like? Is that a lake and there is a cave underground? Or is there like a hill in front of me? So we go first with the image, then we go with what we see, then we go with what we hear. So we tell ourselves, what do I hear? Do I hear birds? Do I hear the water? Do I hear the wind? The next sense is olfactory and gustatory, which means we are trying to, after hearing stuff, smell stuff, maybe taste the air after rain. And then we try to feel with the whole body. How do we feel? Do we feel scared? Are we excited? Are we relaxed? And then the physical, do we feel the cold ground under the feet? We went through all the senses from up until down once. To go deeper into the trance state and create your own meditation, we do this 2 or 3 times. So every time we do it, we are deeper in it. So what are we going to do next? We want to dive into the water. That will be the next state. We see ourselves in our head diving into that water. We maybe take off our clothes or dive into our robe with our robe on or whatever. What do we see? Do we see any light poking through the water? Is it day or night? Do we see moonlight? Do we see a blurry, water? Do we see light on the other side? What do we hear? We can internalize how we hear when we are underwater, that everything is muffled and weird. We cannot smell anything, but we might have water in our mouth. How does it taste? How do we feel? Are we scared? Are we happy? Are we excited? And then, how does the water feel on our body? Does it wash away the heat? Is it very cold? Is it warm? Is it pleasant? And we did the second round. The third round, we get out of the water inside this cave. So the image of the cave comes first. What do we see? Is it a closed cave? Does it have a way out? Is there anything? Then what we see as details. Is there fire burning in the center? Are there cushions for sitting? Is there benches? Is there stones? How are the walls? What's on the ground? Then we go through the auditory. Again, what do we hear? Do we hear bats? Do we hear the fire? Is there wind blowing? Do we hear steps? What do we smell? Do we smell the smoke from that fire? Do we smell the water, mud from where we are standing? Is there any specific taste we feel? Then the next sense, what do we feel? Are we excited? Are we scared? All of that. And then how do we feel? We are all wet. Are we drying out? Is it cold? Is it pleasant next to the fire? We have done this 3 times now. And every time we do it, every time we go through all the senses, we are deeper in the trance state. There is no big magic about that. Inducing somebody into trance state is basically pulling somebody through all the senses. This is how you do hypnosis, in a medical practice, and it's exactly the same thing if you're trying to do any kind of astral work. So you're in there, you're deeper in your state, and now you can do this how many times you want, or you're deep enough and you can invoke the goddess, and she's going to come. Because you are there, you have opened way more than just 1 or 2 senses. You are able to take in everything she tells you. And this is done by everyone because this is how human brain works. So try it out.
Okay. So how many more time you have? Because I have 2 or 3 really important questions for me and also for people who are watching.
I have time, so you can go on.
Yeah. So technically, you work necromancy.
Yeah.
And the most important question with necromancy is not how to summon the dead, because that's relatively easy once you know the basics. The most important question is how to prepare for the act of necromancy, because there is so many people who kill themselves with necromancy, usually unintentionally, because they are not aware that what they are doing is necromancy. For example, spiritistic sessions, or Ouija boards, or looking at the graveyards too much until they start seeing faces from it, etc. There are so many people who kill themselves with necromancy, inflict illnesses, mental insanity, etc. So how can one prepare for the necromancy? What are the procedures?
You don't go doing necromancy because you're curious, right? You have to prepare. So first of all, you have to be able as a person to understand what's happening to you, right? You're not going to do this on your own for the first time. And if you do, good luck, sure. Nothing might happen, or you might just get very frenzied and, freaked out. However, you do want to try different things. You do not want to do necromancy when you're emotionally unstable. Let's say you've been hurt by somebody or something happened to somebody close to you and you're really in distress. If you do any type of magic in this state, the majority of the things you are going to do or can do can be really bad for you, because in this unstable emotional state of anger, of sadness, of trauma, you're going to be open for anything that appears there. You know the saying, do not invoke what you're not able to banish, right? So if you're emotionally unstable at this certain moment, do not do it. The second thing is mental and physical preparation. Most people I've talked to are doing this instinctively. For example, if you're going to work with the spirits, you want to be clean. It's same like with during rituals. People take shower. People take shower with salt and scrub themselves. Trying to get to a state where they're relaxed, emotionally stable, physically clean. And just prepared for that thing. It always takes at least an hour before you do your ritual to actually attune yourself to that kind of energy. If you're doing this for a very long time, and I'm mostly, as said, I'm mostly an explorer. I'm not doing this, to gain fame or, have a row of people outside trying to get help from me. I don't like doing that. I like to explore and learn from what's happening. Still, I'm preparing for every single time that I work in the same manner. So when trying to do this, you want to know as much as possible about the type of spirit you're working. Is it an ancestor? It's easier. Is it a certain kind of spirit? Is it Fae? Is it Jinn? Is it any of the Asian spirits? You want to know what's going to come to you and what you're calling. So there is the preparation in the way of knowledge, and there is the preparation in the way of you being stable and able to work with that. The other thing, when talking about being stable, you have to be able to accept what you see. It's not always nice stuff that comes, and sometimes you're not prepared. You're not prepared for the story, or you're not prepared for what you see in your mind's eye. So that's basically the most important thing. You want somebody to guide you first time, and maybe if you have questions, just have somebody you can get back to if you don't know what you've done or what happened. That's the basics of it. It's not hard to do, but it requires you to be stable for whatever session. If people are doing seances and they're all sitting around the table because they want something to happen, or they want to hear a spirit coming through this person who is shaking, it's they're looking for entertainment. It's not what you want from necromancy.
Yeah, but are there any meditations, any rituals one can do to prepare?
Any type of grounding that you can do. So that I'm not not doing chants like you do. You're a lot connected to the chants, and for you that can be chanting certain things that will put you to peace and put you into that state. For me, is just any classical way of grounding yourself, either by imagining that you are doing something. Let's say I'm going to put myself under sand on a beach and I'm going to ground myself and let everything bad go. Or you go out and do garden work. For example, you're in contact with the ground barefoot. It's different for different people, but any type of grounding is perfect and should be done. That's part of the cleansing ritual as well.
Yeah. So do grounding, guys, but there is one other question. So when you start doing necromancy, you absorb death essence, and to many people it can create illness, it can create sickness, it can create nightmares. So how we can prepare our auras for this infusion of death energy? That's the main question.
That's a great question, and that's a very important question. Let's put it like this. We as people learn in psychology that every fear that a human being has is fear of death, correct? That's what psychologists say. So put this way, us as humans, who are beings who do gymnastics with our minds while doing magic or not doing magic, are capable of working with death. Let's say you work with Morana. She is the goddess of winter and death, literally. Hecate is the goddess of the underworld in one of her aspects, right? So by putting yourself in, okay, this is a bad one because we don't want to talk about suicide and death. Right. This is something that is very frowned upon. You do not want to get somebody into the state where they think I have to go through this feeling like I'm dying, you know, to get through here. So this is not the point. I want to say that in advance. However, there are different techniques when you're doing meditation where you are able to leave your own body. So in order to understand these energies you're working with, you want to be able to be, let's say, on your deathbed or feeling that you are not connected to your body, right? So that's why it's very controversial to talk about this thing. If you're doing necromancies, there's people who are death doulas. I do not know if you know what that is, but those are people who are helping people who are very sick and know that they will die soon cross over. It's a big thing right now. It's everywhere in the world, especially in the US and the Western European countries. There are people who do that. They help other people cross over. And it's really like a guide. It's really like a psychopomp for people who are to die and they know it. Like they work with them for weeks, whatever. Let's say somebody knows they have cancer and they're not going to do it to make it past a month. But for us as practitioners, we do not, you know, it's that's why it's controversial. You want to be able to leave your body in the astral, but not leave it out of desperation. Like a person who is very much in big distress might feel like I want to stay here, right? That's why we want to be stable and not be emotionally in distress. But one of the main things that we should do is learn how to not be afraid to leave the body. So when we do astral travel or astral journey of any way, you're supposed to leave the body and you're connected with its like blue line where you can always go back to your body again. This is the thing that we should work on, because at the moment when you are actually doing necromancy, you're not in your body. You are somewhere in the astral plane, and you should be able to align yourself with the spirits in order to be able to, you know, communicate with them in a proper way.
Okay. So what you are saying is, in order for us to do necromancy, we need to detach from our bodies, to learn
to actually not be afraid to detach, because every time we do any kind of, you know, astral work, we actually are going out. But people who cannot do any astral work are the people who get, you know, shocked when they realize they're leaving the body. They get scared and then they wake up. So that's one of the obstacles that we work on. And, you know, just not be afraid of the dead or of the death, or accept that as part of life. And that's hard because we all have loved ones. We might not want to die yet. You know, it's not the idea, oh, I want to die, I'm going to work with dead. It's different. But we need to, you know, understand death as a normal part of human life. And that's hard for most people. So while doing the astral work, we should not be afraid to leave the body.
Yeah. So I have one other controversial technique. You will maybe disagree with this. This is kind of risky, but I think it's less risky than just summoning the dead without any preparation. So what I would advise is, instead of just summoning the dead and pray that you will stay alive and not get cancer from the locations, I advise this. So go to the grave, to the graveyard, go into deep meditative, a little bit deeper, and then you will see like a dark gray or light green smoke radiating from the grave. And what you do then is you breathe and pull in that dark smoke into your aura. And you just breathe it in until the point you feel a little bit overwhelmed. And then when you feel a little bit overwhelmed, what you should do is you should go up, go to your house, and then take a shower do some cleansing, maybe pray to some gods to like purify you. And every time you do this, you will have the small piece of that essence remaining in your aura. And if you do it every day and purify after, over time your energy body will develop immunity to that essence. And then you can work with death without being injured. There is also another thing you can do. However, this is a little bit more advanced, but I need to say this. You summon one of the necromantic gods. For example, I did this with Dibog the Lame, you know the god, and you worked with him too, kinda. So you summon the necromantic gods and you say, I'm gonna do what you want me to do, and you of the necromancer. And after you do your thing, he will, or whoever necromantic deity will literally infuse you with the cloak of death, which will make you technically immune to all forms of necromantic overload. You will have a protective cloak which will make you able to absorb death energy in really large quantities without fucking up. So the question I have for you is how to start working with ancestors from HECATE perspective.
Your first technique that you said is not controversial at all. And if you want to start working with your ancestors, is you call them. You call them on any, you can start off if you, let's say you don't feel like you're very connected, you're just starting out, but you do want to talk to your ancestors, you need that connection. So you can start out by having a small altar where you will daily or whenever you remember, bring some little offering, sit near there and just try to attune to the energy. However, there are many people who actually go to walk through the graveyard, take pictures, just sit there. And people who like doing that absolutely can tell you that there is a different feeling about the graveyard. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm the person who lived in a couple big cities in my life, and in every city, I'm the one who never goes around the graveyard but walks through there, no matter time of night or the day, because it's very peaceful. So there are many people who are like that. I'm not going there to perform a black mass or do any type of, weird thing. I'm just walking through there. If you have a feeling, that if you're not afraid of the graveyard, I mean, if you're afraid of the graveyard, you should not do any necromancy in the first place. There is something that is holding you back. But if you can go there, and you can also go there to a grave of your deceased grandfather, grandma, somebody in your family. But all in all, if you're working with ancestors, you're not connecting to one person, you're connecting to your whole lineage. So you can do that from home. And in any time, if you're working with Hecate and your ancestors, all you need to know is, how to invoke Hecate, and you can ask her to help you connect, or you can just have her be there while you are trying to connect to your ancestors. It's not different than working with any other spirit. It's actually easier because your ancestor share your DNA, you're connected to them, you can attune to them way easier than anything else.
So there is a little bit weird question I have. So everybody had assholes in ancestral line. So murderers, rapists, plunderers, liars. So how to make sure that we know what type of ancestor we venerate? Because majority of people doesn't have family history, so they do not know. And maybe ancestors we have family histories preserved, maybe they were not so good as we remember them. So how do we know what type of ancestor we venerate and how to venerate malevolent ancestors?
You are now having a huge amount of information about different types of ancestral worship, from the voodoo to the Slavic way, to the Nordic way, to the neo-pagan way, whatever you want to call it. And you've seen the sentence where you are the one who is healing your ancestral line, correct? So it's not a big philosophy how you're doing it. You can just, you know, call in your ancestors. And depending of, you know, if you feel one voice that is telling you stuff, it's usually like everybody. Some people have a feeling that there is different voices telling them what to do. In my own opinion, if an entity tells you what to do and the entity is not a deity, you don't have to do it. Yeah, you have your own free will, right? And this is where you are a healer of your own ancestral line comes in. I mean, if you want to invoke a murder of your ancestral line, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you need a murder in your ancestral line. Most people don't. But if you do not feel the voice of your ancestral line as one voice and you see as many voices, then you are absolutely allowed to pick who you listen to. Those are advices, or that's a guidance. It doesn't mean it's a good guidance. And if you work with somebody, you know, you have 5, 6 voices, you will learn to distinguish them. You will learn to block out the voice that you don't want to hear. I mean, you don't block it out, you don't suppress it. You just actively tell that voice off. I'm not listening to you, you know, or like, you are what you are, dude. Okay, like, go have a walk and stuff like that. It's not hard. You are making a decision what you want to do. That's it. There is nothing to it. There is nothing, you know, if we go to the direction my ancestor told me to do it, and you blame it on your ancestors and you do stupid stuff, it's the same thing like we talked about possession, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is there any like curious experience with HECATE? I personally have one. So I summoned HECATE to reconcile me with one person. And HECATE didn't reconcile me with that one person. He actually brought other person in my life which had the similar qualities as that person. And at the end, my relationship with that second person collapsed in the same way my relationship with first person did. But it kind of reflected the progress I made as a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I made some progress, but it's still far from what it should be. And at the end, the entire point of both relationships collapsing is me not being able to control my own emotion. And it was really intense. So do we have like some curious things which happened with HECATE on your part?
Let's put it that way. Relationships, right? If you are trying to do the same thing with a different person, it's gonna end up the same way. So she gives you a lesson. You've seen that it happened once, then you got a totally different person. Let's say you have one person that is violent in your life, okay? And anybody, not you, but anybody. And then you have another person that was never violent in your life. And the both relationship ended the same shitty way. Then it's something about you. It doesn't matter what kind of partner you get, right? Or what kind of friend you meet, or what kind of colleague you get at work. If it works with your emotions and the way you are acting. So that's all it is. Those relationships are the relationships that should teach you something. And if you see a progress and you see that you've changed, then that's good. But if you have a same relationship with 5 different people in a row, then you haven't changed one bit, right? She's good for that. If you want a guidance to change yourself, depending, no matter what, like work, relationships, friendships, or whatever, she's going to give you those people. It's not going to be nice, but you're going to learn the thing. I think you've come a long way from the last time, we did something bigger together. So it's progress, right?
Yeah, but it's still far from where it should be. And
Yeah.
technically, so the last question for you is this: how HECATE can be used for healing? This is like personal
You
question.
ask her, you can't really use her, she's not a pill you can take. But that's your own relationship with her, right? That you can't have a cookbook telling you, do this, chant this, do this type of ritual 7 times. It's going to help you. That's not how it works. But you working together with her on changing your own perception and changing your own, body in a way, I think you can achieve something. It's just, it's important for us to not fall into the same trap. Like in Christianity, you have miracle healers. And I've heard many people say on the internet, this one deity, you do this, it's going to help you. I've seen yesterday a blog post where a Russian miracle healer is telling you, if you eat cumin and ginger, you're never going to die. The whole Indian, nation, people in India should never die because they eat daily in large quantities. So yeah, you want to manage the expectations when working with the deity, and talk to the deity about what's your next steps. Sometimes you need to work more on your soul, sometimes you need to work more on your body, sometimes you get directions how you should eat, if you should take any herbs, sometimes you don't. So that's highly personal. But what you want is a good connection to the deity. It doesn't matter if it's Hecate or somebody else. She will help when she can. She will help when she can. Same like any other deity, but it's mostly about your own connection to that deity and how you are, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, or if you're just, there are people who call for help and never do anything. Yeah, that's it. I know you're not one of them, but that's an important point.
So, can you tell me, because we never talked about this, this podcast, this interview was so surprising for me because I accidentally stumbled upon side view I never knew exists. So how you got familiarized with hypnosis, where you learned it?
I learned it on the faculty. It was part of my training. We had part where we work with different, let's say, chronicle states and of the sickness, where people have a lot of pain. Also working with people who might have a different kind of problem, which is like if you are addicted to something, from nicotine addiction to different kind of addictions. It went together with acupuncture training, where you can actually use acupuncture to help people overcome addictions, not have, all the bad effects that they can have. But I went further and learned a bit more. So you can use hypnosis to help somebody not feel the pain temporarily. You can use hypnosis to help somebody overcome trauma and different kind of fears, overcome the addiction and stuff like that. However, hypnosis can be used for anything. And what people do not understand is you cannot reprogram a person. That's a very important one. I say, oh, he made, the movies from the 50s, somebody hypnotized them and they robbed the bank. If you wouldn't do this as a person when you're awake, you're absolutely not going to do a thing when you're under hypnosis, because you're more awake, because as we know, it opens more senses. So we learned.
So if somebody doesn't have a potential to do something when he is awake,
he's not going. Yeah, absolutely not.
If somebody, for example, rapes during hypnosis, it simply means that he is repressed rapist when he is awake.
Yes, absolutely. That's the thing you learn as the first thing. So when we talk about addictions and different traumas that people have, let's say somebody was hurt as a kid and he hurts other people. And in the hypnosis, he says like, oh, I wanted to hurt this person, but this is not me. We know that it comes from the trauma. So we learn all of that. But hypnosis in itself, like the trance state, is same for every person. So I've learned to work with people who do have this kind of problem, to have either addiction or a trauma. It's a really hard part of physical and mental health. They have to work together. but you can use the same techniques and hypnosis for any type of trance. And that's why I'm interested in trance. I'm into it for over 20 years right now, and just learning different aspects that you can do with it. Because if you can unlock stuff in your mind to not feel the pain, let's say you do hypnosis when somebody's giving birth, the woman is in a critical state, but you can still hypnotize her and make her not feel the pain, so the baby can come out alive because the woman is not panicking. Then you can use that same potential when you're doing magical work. You can get people to unlock their inner bravery. You can also see people who are like very brave and want to do anything like you. And you can also see people who are afraid to try anything in magic. And then when they're in the trance state and start talking to a deity, they change their personality. They did not change their personality. They just suppressed in real life who they are. It's a very interesting topic to learn about.
So there is also one other thing I'm gonna ask you. I don't know how this is related to HECATE, but I'm gonna ask this question because I have the opportunity. Is there like any, because you practice Chinese medicine, right? And
Yeah.
from what I heard, they put a great emphasis on nutrition.
Yeah.
So is there like any way you can eat any plants you can eat, any fruit you can eat to like have stronger relationship with HECATE specifically with that energy?
Not with HECATE specifically. However, you can use or you can leave out certain stuff from your food if you're trying to connect astrally to anything or to a deity or to another person. The Chinese medicine puts, I'm going to just shorten it because it's a very, very large knowledge that goes into this. But you have elements. You have 5 elements, and every food belongs to one element. Additionally, to the element, the food has its thermics. It means this thing belongs to the element of fire and is hot. This thing belongs to element of fire and is cooling to your body. That's how the whole herbal medicine works. This thing belongs to the fire element. What does that mean? It works onto your heart and your intestine. That's what the fire element is, your inner organs. But then this can bring more heat energy and this can bring more cool energy. What you don't want while doing any type of astral work is being overloaded with the stuff that is very cooling. Why? Because it creates phlegm in your body. It creates water retention. When you have too much water retention, your mind is sluggish. You cannot think straight. You might even have problem remembering. So I can tell you right off the bat what those foods are, for example, that you want to avoid maybe a day and on the day of doing your necromantic work or working with any deity is any type of dairy. Dairy makes you very, it makes you have a large water retention. Too much bread and, bakery stuff, sweets, beer, and all the tropical fruits. That's all. That's the things you can avoid to actually be able to connect better. The things that make you more open and clean out some of the water that you retain in your body is all the herbal spices. So pepper, chili, rosemary, thyme, all of the herbs that we use in there. That's it.
Okay. So you recommend technically vegetarian diet with a lot of spices?
No. Meat is a big part of the Chinese food, and meats belong to different elements, which means if you want to make your heart stronger and to open up your heart chakra, you should eat lamb, for example. If you want to work on your life energy and the kidneys, you should eat pork. Meats are all warm. You shouldn't overeat them, same like you shouldn't drink too much alcohol because they're too warm. But what you don't want in your system while doing any type of astral work is the stuff that is cold and the stuff that makes you, your energy flow slower, but not vegetarian.
So no dairy, no bread,
No
and
sweets,
beer. No
No
sweets.
sweets and no tropical fruits, no bananas, no oranges and stuff like that because they're very cold.
Okay, so this is really interesting. I have to apply some aspects of this in
Try
my
it out.
personal
It's easy.
practice. Yeah. So for the end of the clip, like, can you just repeat how to go into trance systematically for you as a hypnotist?
Yes.
So first so I will tell you what I remembered. So first you visualize, then you hear, then you touch,
Then you
and
smell
then you,
and taste. Smell and taste, then emotions, then the touch. Or you can do touch and emotions depending what you do, but you go from up to down. So you see the image in your head, which is your setting. When you have a patient, you agree upon where you want to go. Like the patient wants to resolve something that happened in their past. So they make a scene where they meet their father, mother, or whatever. Then you visualize, you see what you see around you, you hear, you smell and taste, you touch, and you check on your emotions or do emotions and touch. And you do that several times so you go in deeper.
okay. So thank you for being here on the podcast. It was really an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You
I'm
told
glad.
us about your stuff, and yeah, I really am excited to interview you for the next interview. And next time it will probably be in a few months because you are busy as fuck, so I don't want to bother you. Next time it will be about Kundalini, about chakras and energy work, because I see right now that you are really skilled at it. You kind of allude to it in many conversations we had, but it was never so open and as in this one. So thank you so much for coming and talk to you in the future.
Well, thank you. And yeah, have a great day, everyone.
Yeah, cool. And Tala also has a YouTube channel, and please subscribe. So I'll put it all in the description. And whoever subscribes and proves me he subscribed, he gonna get the right to ask one question on my channel, and I will probably answer some of those because I have those Q&As. So thank you for coming and talk to you soon. Yeah.
Talk to you. See you.
See ya.
Bye.